The first time they called him Garbage Boy, Tyler Hawkins was 13 years old, pushing a borrowed garden cart heaped with restaurant waste.
Hey, trash kid! What's for lunch? Rotted lettuce?
The laughter bounced off the alley walls. Tyler's jaw tightened, but his pace never changed. He'd been collecting scraps for 3 weeks: coffee grounds from the cafe, vegetable peels from the bistro, eggshells from the bakery down the street, every morning before school. That night, his mother, Sarah, came home from her second job, still in her diner uniform, her eyes mapping the overdue bills on the table.
If I pick up one more shift, maybe I can cover the electric before they shut it off next week.
Tyler watched her from the doorway. In his hands, a battered soil science book from the library, sticky notes flagging every page on microbial life.
She shouldn't have to work herself to death. Not for me.
He'd already spent months learning how to turn waste into something alive, a soil so rich it could breathe life back into dead dirt. The next morning, he was back in the alley before sunrise. The boys weren't there yet, but he knew they would be, and he knew he didn't care.
Excuse me, sir. Could I have your kitchen scraps for composting? I'll be here every morning.
The chef glanced at the cart full of coffee grounds, then at the garbage bin, and shrugged. By Friday, Tyler had 3 steady sources and a map of the downtown alleys pinned to his bedroom wall. Sarah came home early one afternoon and found a soil science notebook open on the kitchen table, her son's handwriting filling every margin.
Thermophilic breakdown, carbon to nitrogen ratios. This isn't a school project. This is a business plan. Tyler, what is all this? Are you doing something dangerous?
It's just composting, Mom. But if I get it right, the soil could sell for more than dirt ever has. I've studied everything.
It's actually hot. Like there's a fire inside.
That's the bacteria, Mom. Billions of them, turning garbage into the richest soil on Earth.
She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she put her hand on his shoulder, and the weight of the overdue bills felt a little less.
Scott Branson, owner of the largest landscape supply company in the county, first spotted the black steaming mounds from his office window, rising behind a neighbor's fence.
I want to report an illegal dump. A boy in a gray hoodie is piling up rotting garbage 2 blocks from my supply yard.
The city environmental hotline logged the complaint at 3:47 p.m., noting the caller's tone was less concerned and more offended.
Another nuisance complaint. Probably a big leaf pile. I'll check it out tomorrow morning.
The next morning, a city vehicle rolled to a stop on Tyler's street, right in front of the modest house with a wooden fence. Officer Martinez stepped onto the cracked sidewalk, clipboard in hand, the smell of rich earth already strong in the air.
That scent isn't rotting garbage. That smells like healthy soil.
He walked to the front door, a man used to finding illegal dumping, and yet already certain this was something different.
Tyler Hawkins, I am Officer Martinez from the City Environmental Office. I need to see what you have going on in your backyard.
Tyler's heart pounded, but he stepped aside. The man with the clipboard walked into the house, and the fate of a 13-year-old's dream hung by a city permit. Tyler led Officer Martinez to the backyard, where rows of steaming black piles rose like sleeping giants under clear tarps.
This isn't a dump. You are running a full-scale thermophilic process.
The officer knelt, pushed a digital thermometer into the heart of the pile, and watched the numbers climb.
148 degrees. You've got a perfect microbial bloom. The city doesn't punish this. We license it.
He unclipped a form from his board, a youth business permit application, and began filling it out with Tyler's name.
This lets you operate legally. The city gets the compost data. You get protection from complaints. Deal?
3 days later, Martinez returned with a stamped, signed document. Tyler held the first official paper of his life.
They didn't shut me down. They made it real. Mom won't have to worry so much now.
The permit went up in a plastic sleeve on the fence beside the compost piles, a shield against anyone who called it garbage. Scott Branson heard the news from a city clerk the next morning. The boy he'd tried to shut down now had a license, and Scott had made his first serious mistake. Tyler spent every afternoon now in the public library, a fortress of old soil science books that nobody his age ever touched.
Actinomycetes for lignin breakdown. Carbon to nitrogen ratio must be exactly 30:1.
He filled a spiral notebook with formulas and temperature curves until his writing hand cramped. He fell asleep once in the science aisle, and a librarian let him rest until the late bell rang.
The thermophilic phase must peak above 130 degrees for 3 weeks, or the pathogens survive.
He designed a 4-stage thermal curve and pinned it above his bed, a diagram that looked more like engineering than gardening.
Eggshells for calcium, coffee for nitrogen. A tablespoon too much of anything and the whole pile goes acidic.
He measured everything with a kitchen scale and a borrowed pH meter, treating compost like a chemical equation. In the backyard, a single test bin held his first fully controlled batch, black, crumbly, and steaming with invisible life. By spring, he had a precise method, but no one outside his fence had yet seen the quality of the soil he was creating. The first Saturday of spring, Tyler carried 5 brown paper bags to the farmer's market and unfolded a card table in the back row.
$80 a bag. They'll either laugh or walk away.
2 stalls down, a man selling bulk mulch for $5 a bag read the sign aloud and barked a laugh. The mulch vendor called to a passerby, loud enough for half the market to hear.
Look who brought his garbage to the market. You really think anyone's gonna pay that?
Don't react. Not here, not now.
Tyler kept his eyes on the crowd, hands flat on the table, and waited. Shoppers brushed past, heads turning briefly at the price before moving on. By 11 o'clock, the mulch vendor had sold out and was packing his crates. Tyler's bags remained untouched. The market manager checked his watch and asked if Tyler planned to stay until close. Tyler nodded. He had no other plan. At 3:45, a man in a white chef's coat stopped at the table, his eyes moving from the sign to the open bag of black soil. He picked up a pinch, rubbed it between his fingers, and said, $80 for dirt. What makes this worth more than my dinner?
Taste it.
The chef touched a tiny crumb to his tongue. He froze, eyes unfocusing like he was reading something invisible. He said, "This isn't soil. This is like tasting a forest floor. Where did you learn to do this?"
Public library.
The chef pulled 4 $20 bills from his pocket and laid them on the table.
He actually paid.
The chef asked for Tyler's name and wrote it on a napkin. "You'll hear from me. I know a dozen people who need this." By 4 o'clock, Tyler had sold only 1 bag, but as he folded the table, the chef was already on his phone. 3 days later, word from the chef brought 4 new buyers to Tyler's stall before noon. He sold out in 40 minutes.
They're waiting in line. For dirt. My dirt.
Garbage boy's making a few bucks. Still stinks like a dumpster.
Tyler took a wire brush to the fence the same evening until trash was scraped back to bare wood. By 2 o'clock each morning, he was still in the backyard, filling paper bags by headlamp light.
Your light was on at 3 a.m. You can't keep this up and go to school.
She's right. But if I stop now, the piles cool down, the biology dies.
At school, Jake's taunts followed Tyler between classes, but now they felt like static, noise he wasn't sure he still had to hear.
If I drop out, I lose the permit. If I stay, I lose the compost.
At the next market, a line formed at 7 a.m. The price sign now read $85, and nobody laughed. One of the chefs who bought Tyler's soil sent a cup-sized sample to the State University Agronomy Lab without telling him. The lab technician ran 3 separate assays and called her supervisor over to confirm the readings. The report read, microbial biomass carbon 267% above reference soil. Actinomycete colonies, 8 times typical, no pathogens detected.
267%. That's not soil. That's a superorganism.
Before the end of the week, a commercial greenhouse owner who saw the leaked report called Tyler directly. He stood in Tyler's backyard, rubbing the black crumbs between his fingers, his expression shifting from skepticism to calculation. He ordered 40 bags on the spot, for every seedling flat in his operation. Scott Branson got a copy of the lab report from a landscaper who was canceling his annual topsoil contract.
267%. This kid has weaponized dirt.
By summer, Tyler's soil was no longer a curiosity. It was a necessity that every serious grower in the county was chasing. Sarah had been watching the numbers climb. With the greenhouse order, her son had made more in a month than she earned in both jobs.
I am handing in my notice tomorrow. If we're doing this, we're doing it together.
The same week, Tyler withdrew from middle school and enrolled in a homeschool program that let him study between turning piles.
It's not quitting school. It's trading a classroom for a laboratory.
Scott Branson started hearing the name Hawkins at every landscaping trade breakfast he attended. A landscaper said, "I don't buy topsoil anymore. The kid's mix pays for itself in yield."
He's eating my market alive, and he's barely old enough to drive.
At home, Scott's wife showed him the overdue invoices. The Branson supply yard was quieter than it had been in 20 years. He made a few angry calls to the city again, but the clerk reminded him the Hawkins operation was fully permitted and well within code. That night, he sat in his truck outside the Hawkins house, watching the steam rise from the back fence. He was no longer angry. He was afraid. The next afternoon, Scott Branson didn't call the city. He walked straight into Tyler's backyard, worn leather checkbook in hand.
You've got a nice little operation here, son. I am prepared to make it worth your while.
He's not here to complain. He's here because he's out of options.
$1.2 million. For the brand, the recipe, and you walk away.
The number hung in the air. It was more money than the Hawkins family had ever seen.
And what happens to my customers? To the growers who switched from your dirt to mine?
You are 13. You don't understand how business works. Take the money and be a kid.
I understand exactly what he's afraid of. I'll need time to think about it.
Scott's jaw tightened. He'd expected a quick yes. Instead, he walked away with his checkbook still open and his stomach colder than before. That evening, Tyler went to find his mother and saw the kitchen table covered not with bills, but with law textbooks and a laptop glowing with legal research.
Mom, are you studying law?
I started right after I quit my second job. I never stopped, Tyler. I just didn't tell you until I was sure.
She opened a binder stuffed with handwritten briefs and showed him the online course certificate she'd earned. She'd passed the bar.
This buyout Scott offered you is a terrible deal. If you sell, you lose everything you created, and he wins.
She became a lawyer while I was building compost. She never gave up on me.
I've already drafted a counteroffer, a distribution contract. Scott can sell your soil, but he'll be working for us.
She turned the laptop toward him. The document read, Hawkins Living Soil Regional Distribution Agreement.
You are not just my mom. You are my lawyer now.
I've always been your lawyer in my heart. Now I have the license to prove it. Let's make him sign.
The next morning, in a rented conference room, Scott Branson arrived with his lawyer. Tyler sat beside his mother, who held a leather folder.
I see you brought your mom. How touching. Let's get this over with.
I have a counteroffer. Read it.
The contract read, Hawkins Living Soil Regional Distribution Agreement.
You become our wholesale distributor. You handle logistics. We own the brand and set the retail price.
This is absurd. I am not a delivery boy for a teenager.
Your company lost 40% of its commercial contracts to us. That number will climb unless you sign.
Scott's lawyer leaned in and whispered something. Scott's face drained of color.
She's right. If I don't sign, the bank takes everything.
He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. He walked out, the contract unsigned. In the parking lot, he sat in his truck, staring at nothing. He drove home in silence. The unsigned contract crumpled on the passenger seat. When he walked through the door, his wife was at the kitchen table, a stack of bank letters spread before her.
She hasn't said a word all evening. The bank must have called again. Restructuring. That's what they call it before they take the keys.
He went to his office and pulled up the business accounts. The red figures on the screen were worse than he had admitted to anyone.
If I don't sign, the company dies. If I do, I work for a child.
He sat there until midnight, cold coffee beside him. Then he picked up the phone.
Hawkins, it's Branson. I am ready to discuss that distribution agreement.
He listed his conditions, but his voice had no force. Tyler listened and said simply, "Tomorrow, same place." Scott hung up and stared at the wall. The trash kid had just become his boss, and there was nothing left to do but show up. Scott arrived before daybreak. No lawyer, no checkbook this time. Just a man with a pen and nothing left to negotiate.
Let's get this done.
The terms are exactly what we offered. You distribute, we supply. Sign at the bottom.
3 decades. 30 years of building a name. And I can't outlast a 13-year-old playing with garbage.
He lifted the pen like it weighed 10 pounds. The nib hovered above the signature line, his knuckles bone white. He signed. The strokes were jagged, each letter gouging a small piece of his pride onto the page. Then Tyler signed, his name steady, his hands still carrying the dust of the morning's turning pile.
Welcome to the team.
I work for him now.
The ink dried in shared silence. From that moment, every bag of Hawkins' living soil in the region moved through the very hands that had once been scrubbed free of garbage. In the months that followed, the name Hawkins moved through the region like water through loose soil. Branson's trucks, once parked idle in the gravel yard, now rolled out every morning with a fresh green logo on their doors. Every commercial greenhouse in a 100-mile radius hung a sign, powered by Hawkins' living soil. The backyard operation became a facility. 10 rows of steaming windrows, a loading dock, a small office with a humming phone. The fence that once read, "Trash Kid," had been scrubbed clean, but Tyler left the faint letters visible, a scar he chose not to erase. Scott stood in his office, now a distribution hub, his shipments to old clients replaced entirely by Hawkins' product. On Tyler's office wall, a map of the region showed 200 pins, every organic farm, every high-end landscaper, every greenhouse.
They used to laugh at me for pushing a cart. Now they load truckloads.
The landscapers who once bought Branson's cheap topsoil now paid $80 a bag without flinching, because the yield spoke louder than price. By the time the leaves turned, the region had a new standard, and it had been grown by a 13-year-old they called Garbage Boy. 2 towns over, Jake Miller was stacking soup cans at the supermart when a face on the magazine rack stopped him cold.
That can't be him. Not Garbage Boy.
The headline read, "Teen Compost Mogul Redefines Agriculture." Beneath it, Tyler, older, dirt still under his nails, smiling.
He's a millionaire, and I am still here stacking cans for minimum wage.
He remembered the words he'd spray painted on Tyler's fence, the laughter in the alley, the power he thought he had.
I called him garbage. He turned it into something worth more than I'll ever make.
He looked around the long fluorescent aisle, the job he'd taken after dropping out, the life he'd settled for.
He never even looked back at people like me, did he?
At the next register, a former classmate whispered to the cashier, pointing at the magazine. The tones were no longer mocking, but Tyler was 30 miles away, turning a compost pile in the morning steam. He probably hadn't thought about Jake Miller in months. On a quiet side street, Sarah Hawkins opened her own law office. The nameplate on the door read, "Sarah Hawkins, JD."
I waited 20 years to see those letters after my name.
Mom, the office looks great. She used to pour coffee in a diner. Now she's a lawyer. We both made it.
Your first contract saved my practice before it opened. I'll always be your lawyer.
You were always my reason.
They stood together in the sunlit office, the silence filled with everything they had survived. Through the window, the town looked the same, but inside that room, 2 lives had been entirely remade.
Thank you for not listening to them.
Tyler didn't answer. He just squeezed her hand, and for the first time, neither of them felt the weight of the past. Before sunrise, the composting facility was already breathing, steam lifting from the windrows in long, pale columns. Tyler walked out past the loading dock, knelt beside the freshest pile, and sank his fingers into the black crumb.
Still warm, still alive, like the first batch.
The sun broke over the far edge of the property, flooding the rows with gold. He let the soil run through his fingers, the same gesture he'd made 3 years ago with a handful from a borrowed cart. But now, behind him, the field stretched wide, not a backyard, but a facility that fed an entire region.
This is what garbage becomes when you listen to it.
The trucks were still quiet. The workers had not yet arrived. For this one moment, the whole operation was just a boy and his soil. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and turned back toward the office. The sun climbed higher, and the world woke up around him. The trash kid had become the soil king, and the soil was still warm. They called him Garbage Boy. A laugh in an alley, a name meant to stick like the dirt on his hands. But what they threw away, he picked up. What they mocked, he studied. He didn't need their belief. He had a library card, a borrowed cart, and a mother who showed him what sacrifice looked like. The trash became gold, not because of luck, but because a boy listened to the earth when no one listened to him. He didn't shout or fight. He just kept showing up every morning while the world told him he was nothing, and the nothing he was given became the richest soil in the region. Now every greenhouse, every farm, every landscape that matters carries his name. His mother, now a lawyer, built her practice on the case of her son's survival. Not bad for a kid who pushed a cart. Not bad at all. The soil remembers. And so did he. Tyler Hawkins. Living Soil now supplies over 200 commercial clients. Sarah Hawkins passed the bar in 2022 and founded a law practice serving family businesses. Scott Branson's company, once failing, now distributes Hawkins soil under license. The youth business permit still hangs in Tyler's office, beside a map of every grower he serves. The alley where he was mocked is quiet today. The old graffiti has been power washed clean. Jake Miller still stacks cans at the supermart. The magazine cover is long gone, but every morning, steam rises from the windrows and the soil is still warm. Tyler is still the first one there, hands in the dark crumb, checking the microbial bloom. The trash kid became the soil king, not by proving them wrong, but by never stopping. The dirt remembers. That was the story of Tyler Hawkins. If you believe in betting on the underestimated, if you know that what the world discards can become the richest thing it has, then, like this video, it tells the algorithm that stories like this matter. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next one, because Tyler wasn't the first to be counted out, and he won't be the last. But when someone is brave enough to push a cart through laughter, to turn garbage into gold, the least we can do is share their story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next one.